Well, it's an early morning today, and I'm up before the dawn. Some of you might get that reference. I'm here at the Waterfront Hotel. I've actually it was only a week ago I just arrived back in the Philippines, and now, if you're seeing this, I'm probably flying somewhere towards Taipei by the time you see this. Last time I traveled, again, just a week ago, just with the beige backpack. It's a really good backpack. Very, very durable. It'll last forever. I'm doing a slightly different format today. It's about maybe 5:30 in the morning. And again, I'm here at the waterfront in Cebu. So if you've been following along, my mom's health has taken quite a downturn. She's, at first, before I left, she didn't have much appetite, but she was able to eat and drink. And I got a message yesterday that now she's losing the ability as well as the desire to eat or drink, which those of you who have been down this road know that's not a good sign. You can't really live long without liquids. And a heavy-set person could actually live off their fat reserves for a while, but she's down to about 95 pounds. So as soon as I got the news, I started looking for flights, and here I am. I'll be boarding, well, at this point, I'll be boarding in a few hours. But again, by the time you see this, I'm already on my way. I got to say, I'm really thankful to quite a few close friends of mine, at least a good dozen or so, who have either been through this or, their parents are already approaching this stage, of being elderly and all that. And they've been very supportive. What can you say? What can you tell a person that is about to, they're looking at the prospect of their last surviving parent facing their final days. It's like waiting for a shoe to drop. It's like, it's going to happen. You don't know when. The situation I'm in is it's going to take me, of course, roughly total flight and layover time about 19 hours to get from Cebu to Los Angeles. And, I might get there in time and get to spend some more quality time with her. I might not. And as I was, telling various friends of mine, I try to look at every difficult situation and split it, all the different elements, to two categories. There are the things that are within my control to affect, and it's my job to do what I can to optimize those factors. In this case, book a flight, get there as fast as possible. And then there are all the things that are outside of my ability to change or affect. And those things, rather than, and this is where Taoism comes in handy, rather than shout at the sky and try to stop the rain, you have to accept that certain things are simply beyond your control to affect. The example I gave previously was that if it's heavy rain outside, there's nothing you can do to change the rain. And if you got to go somewhere, all you can affect is whether you postpone going where you need to go or you take an umbrella. You can only do what you can do. But the rain's not going to end till the rain ends. And the sun ain't going to come out again until the sun comes out again. And you just have to accept that, not fight against it or think that getting upset is going to change anything. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to stay in a tranquil state of mind. I'll get there when I get there. Once I plop my physical body into my assigned seat, I'm going to get there at the same time everybody else on the plane's going to get there, and the pilot's going to, stick to his schedule. So, and I have to say also, again, I started to say, I'm very appreciative of my friends, and, at the risk of forgetting anybody, there's been so many. Some of them you may know. Of course, Gio, Jason, Old Dog, Young Paul, Joe, Chris, Daniel, Daryl, Jeff, who I just had lunch with yesterday, and that's the thing. Like I said, many of them have been through this, and just so many guys that have privately just kind of stepped up to the plate and made themselves available. I mean, I really appreciate having them in my life, and so that's been really helpful. If you're not aware by now, Facebook listens to everything. They read your PMs. The microphone picks up what you're talking about, even when you're not using it. You know, you can find videos on this, and I tested this way back in 7 years ago. They've been doing this. Is nothing new. They've been doing this for years. Speaking to all these different guys who have been through this or are facing the same situation, they've been very supportive. Oh, yeah, the reason I mentioned it was because as I've had these discussions, wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden Facebook is, showing me in my feed videos about what it means to lose a parent, an elderly parent. That's not by accident. But one of them was actually a bit helpful, and it confirmed something that I had thought about years ago, is that, we get to believing that and accepting, well, yeah, our parents, they've been there since we can remember. They've always been there. And even if they get divorced, they're somewhere in the world. Your dad's out there somewhere and your mom's there. And, it becomes ubiquitous. It's just ever present. You just take it for granted. Of course your parents are there. And years ago, I remember thinking, because my dad had passed away, my stepdad had passed away, my grandmother I was very close to passed away. And I remember thinking, well, man, my mom is all I got left, as far as the close nuclear family parents. And years ago, I remember thinking, wow, I just can't fathom that she would not be here anymore. I mean, I know that logic says, okay, we all have an expiration date. Or as V says, my wife, she says, we are not robots. We don't live forever. And so I did see in my feed, as Facebook was eavesdropping on my conversations, I did see where somebody, in my feed, this video saying the exact same thing that I came to years ago, is that when you do lose both your parents, I think only at that point do you understand how an orphan has always felt. A person who lost both their parents. I had a close buddy of mine, Rich von Eiderstein. We used to play chess every day. He was a chess champion from Maine, and we used to play chess twice a day during lunch. And I think for 9 months, I only won 3 games. Anyways, but I learned a lot playing him. That was the whole point. But he was, back then, about 30 years old, and he had already lost his parents, both of them, in a car crash. And, it was tough for him. And he was a very solid guy, very, very logical, very analytical, very intelligent, well-studied guy. In fact, he used to work there in the chem lab. But yeah, the idea of becoming an orphan, there's something so final about that. Because once that happens, that's forever. It's not going to change. That status doesn't get better. You're officially, even though you grow up, you turn 18, you move out, you're independent, you're 63 years old, it's not that you're relying on your parents, but you rely on the fact that they're still there, that you can call them, have some conversation, a few laughs, keep in touch. If you go through a divorce or something, they're there to console you and stand by you, or whatever it is you're facing. It's like they're there. And the idea that, again, many guys have already crossed this threshold where they've lost both their parents. One of my close friends, Michael, his dad just passed away, not even, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And to lose your last parent, it's like life's telling you, well, since you were 18, you've been on your own, but now you're really on your own. You're really on your own. You're an orphan. You're in this world, and you can travel all over the planet, but what you can't do is pick up the phone and talk to your mom and dad anymore. And there's just such a stark, real essence to that really just hits you to the bone, So my goal, again, I can only do what I can do. I can only get back to California as fast as I can. My goal is to get there before she passes. We'll see what happens. I should be there in roughly... The flight time is 19 hours, and then traffic through L.A. to Riverside County, that's about 2 hours. So we're talking about 24 hours from right now. Hopefully I will be there at her bedside again. Hopefully that happens. But before I left, which was just last week, I just spent about 20 minutes. Nobody else was in the house, and I was there with my mom, and I just put my head on the side of her bed there. There's a recliner there, and she was awake. We were talking, and I just locked eyes with her the whole time, just communicating almost as much through our eyes than anything else. And we reminisced. We talked about this one old spooky house that we used to stay in, because my mom was, she was struggling at the time for money, being a single parent after divorce. And I told her the same thing I've told her many times. I said, we call it the spooky house. I said, I know you were struggling at the time to make ends meet, and you provided for us, and it wasn't the best house. It literally creaked. It had wooden floorboards. It literally creaked when you walked to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And even when you're just laying in bed, everybody's asleep. The house would just constantly settle. So there was like bumps in the night every night. And I wouldn't doubt that there was mice, under the house and all kinds of stuff. But like I told my mom, I said, I know that was a stressful time for you. Single mom with 2 kids to raise, going back to school, working, making ends meet. I said, but that was like one of the happiest times of my life. I said, as a kid, you provided for me safety, security. You didn't vent the stress of the situation on us. You bore on your shoulders the heaviness of the time. And, so, we talked about memories, about just different times of my life, and I told her I appreciated, simple things like again, when money was tight, payday, she would either take us for banana splits, or she would take us to an all-you-can-eat fish fry, deep fried fish. And in both instances, I was old enough to notice. But when we went to get banana splits, she would order one for me and my brother. She never ordered one for herself. And after we were about halfway through our banana split, she'd go, can I have a little taste, Same thing with the fish fry, she would order the all-you-can-eat for me and my brother fish fry. Came with some chips, some french fries. And she wouldn't get an order for herself. And then, we would eat, and then she'd go, let me have a little piece, and give her a piece of the fish, and then I'd go, I'm full. She goes, well, go ahead and ask for some more, go ahead and ask for another plate. And so, the waitress would come by and they'd bring another plate. And my mom I couldn't eat, I was full. My mom would discreetly wrap it in a napkin, and she would put it in her purse, under the table. And the waitress saw it. The waitress knew. She read the situation. She didn't say anything. And we would go back, twice a month, payday. The waitress never gave her a problem about it. So, for all of you who have lost your parents, you have my deepest condolences. And for those of you who still have your parents, give them a call. Whatever grievances you may have with them, get past that, because you only have your parents for a set amount of time.